This is Marsha P. Johnson, an American, a gay liberation activist, and a self-proclaimed drag queen. Born in 1945, Marsha grew up during a time where the LGBT community was very heavily discriminated against. It wasn't until 1962 when Illinois became the first state to decriminalize homosexual relationships, and during this time, people across the country were being arrested for cross-dressing. Today, the LGBT citizens of the United States are in a much better place, and that is in part thanks to Marsha and the things that she contributed to. Arguably, the biggest thing that Marsha contributed to during her life was the Stonewall Riots. On June 28, 1969, the riots began at the Stonewall Inn, which was a popular gay bar at the time. On a night that the bar was full of patrons, police officers entered with a warrant and arrested 13 people, including employees and people who were violating the state's gender-appropriate clothing statute. The patrons of the bar, as well as members of the neighborhood, were tired of the discrimination and harassment that they had been facing for years, and so instead of dispersing from the bar, they stayed and became more and more agitated. The riots began after a police officer hit a lesbian over the head as he forced her into a police van. This woman called for the crowd to act after being hit. At first, they threw small rocks and coins at the police, but within a few minutes, a full-blown riot had broken out. While Marsha wasn't there at the start of the riots, she was there shortly after it began, and because of them, she became a prominent figure in the LGBT community. This riot is considered the start of the modern fight for LGBT rights, and led to many gay rights organizations beginning, including the Gay Liberation Front, which Marsha was a founding member of. It also led to the start of the Pride Parades, which began 1 year after the uprising as a way to commemorate it. Being a part of the Stonewall Riots wasn't the last thing that Marsha contributed to the LGBT community. In 1970, Marsha, along with Sylvia Rivera, founded the Street Transvestite Action Revolutionaries, also known as STAR, and with it opened the Star House. The Star House is made as a shelter and place to socialize for the LGBT youth that were otherwise forced to live on the streets. Both Marsha and Sylvia were homeless and had to hustle in order to get food and shelter every night. They knew that without help, it would be the same for the LGBT youth that lived in the city, so they founded the Star House to help them. Every day they would go out and hustle in order to pay the rent and feed the kids that lived there. The original Star House is a parked trailer truck in an outdoor parking lot, but after it got towed away, Marsha and Sylvia decided to find a more permanent location for it. They ended up with a building at 213 2nd Avenue. The Star House was historic for the LGBT community. Not only was it the first LGBT youth shelter in America, but it was also the first organization led by trans women of color in the United States. The shelter ended up expanding into other states before it unfortunately shut down in the mid-1970s. Near the end of her life, Marsha committed herself to AIDS activism. She joined ACT UP, a political group whose goal is to help improve the lives of people with AIDS, as well as to end the AIDS pandemic. On July 6, 1992, Marsha was found murdered. While it was initially ruled as a suicide by police, the case was reopened 25 years later due to the circumstances that she died under. We still do not know who killed her. Since she died in 1992, she never lived to see things like the Supreme Court legalizing gay marriage in all 50 states. Without her contributions to the LGBT community, they may not have accomplished as much as they have today towards their goals of ending the hatred that their community faces, as well as getting equal rights for everyone.